Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pull Focus, the cinema-based entertainment podcast where a couple of freelancers come together to talk shop. My name is Mike, and as always, I am joined by my brother in crime, a man so capable he doesn't need the code, a man so wise he can see through the looking glass. He truly is the one, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert Andrus.
Thank you. Thank you. That's just too kind. I really appreciate the standing ovation. Hey, how's about this stadium that we're in today?
Remove
I
locations.
can't believe we're actually in the Rose Bowl Stadium. Hello, everybody.
Okay, everybody quiet down. We actually have a treat for you guys today because we have a special guest on today's episode. And it's an absolute pleasure, a privilege for him to move some time around. A very important person in my life and somebody I want to introduce to you guys because he is a specialist when it comes to what we're going to be talking about. He is, of course, a man so worldly, he can cheat the simulation. A man so lethal, he doesn't care if you know Kung Fu. The living embodiment of bullet time, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Antanasio Juarez, my brother.
Thank you for that sparkly introduction.
Okay, everybody sit down.
Right.
Sit down. We're ready to move on.
Everybody shut up. It's all right. Guys.
Give them a warm welcome. Yes,
absolutely.
Ovations.
Everybody's shaking hands. Everybody's together. Good.
Congratulations.
I am
You-
so very happy to be talking to both of you today, especially about what we're going to be talking about on today's episode. It is very exciting and very cool to have two people that I care about so very much, who absolutely are not going to agree about this movie whatsoever. And I cannot wait to make it happen.
I have a feeling we're going to agree a lot.
Agree a lot, sure. But I can't. This has been a conversation that ever since Anth brought it up that he wanted to talk about it, I've been excited to get this taken care of, and I can't wait to get into it. So we're just going to get into it. We're going to transcend realities, everybody. We're going to be talking about The Matrix Resurrections.
Going back to the Matrix.
We can't see it, but we're all trapped inside these strange repeating loops.
Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious.
But this is the moment for you to show us what is real. I remember this.
So deja vu. And yet it's obviously all wrong. Maybe this isn't the story we think it is.
They taught you good. Made you believe their world was all you deserved. But some part of you knew that was a lie. Some part of you remembered what was real.
It's so easy to forget how much noise the Matrix pumps into your head. Something else makes the same kind of noise. War.
What happens to Nia?
The most important choice in Neo's life. It's not his to make.
She believed in me. It's my turn to believe in her.
Part of me feels like I have been waiting my whole life for you.
If you want to see Trinity again, fight for her!
I saw this in a dream. My dream ended here.
So that was a trailer for The Matrix Resurrections, guys. We're going to just jump right into this and just get into it because I'm going to jump right into it and then get into it because this is a movie that has held a lot of contention amongst the fandom. It has been it has the entire Matrix trilogy, and the Matrix IP itself has done this amazing thing of being able to bring people who do not like film, I know they exist, into enjoying movies because of just the Wachowskis at first with the main trilogy, doing really great technical work, having very strong story structure, and being able to just provide the audiences with not only stories that really resonate with like the hero's journey, philosophy, and that kind of thing, but also putting in really good action scenes and being able to kind of hide the lead enough so that people can understand very simply the rules of this universe and the ways in which the characters could follow them. It was brilliant. We've seen over the past decade how this particular IP has been exploited. We also have seen how it's actually been used in positive ways. And one of the questions that I really have in my head whenever I come back to this series, because I watch the Matrix movies every year. It isn't like a situation where I haven't taken time. It's true. And then I'm talking like the entire trilogy. And everybody has
to
their
relive
order.
the magic.
Oh, exactly. And everybody has like that whole... How many times have you gotten in an argument with your friends who happen to be like filmies, like, either it seems to me as if they're like on one or two sides. It's like, oh, it was brilliant. It changed cinema. It was, the film of the decade, the film that made things, maybe you want to get into film, that kind of stuff. On the other side, you also have like the argument where it's just corporate, it's comic book stuff. I don't care if people take it so seriously. And seeing as you're the guest on the show, when it comes to like, this is a series that we've talked about personally. We talk about it every holiday. We brought it up. When this movie came out, you and I had like hour-long conversations over the phone about like, what do you think of this and that? I know it sounds
when the
like...
trailer came out, I remember like so that trailer, I think it's a very well done trailer. Like it makes you want to see the movie.
Yeah.
I think that's the point of putting together a trailer like that. Unfortunately, it's the best thing
about
that they did, like, because the rest of the movie, tragically, it's a swing and a miss in multiple areas.
Yeah.
But I will say this, it's not a terrible movie.
Right.
It's a bad movie. But I love every second
of it. I know. There's that weird dichotomy.
That I love it because it is a bad movie.
Yeah.
But I think without getting too deep into the lore and the history and the previous, episodic adventures of our character arc for Neo.
Yeah.
I mean, this as a standalone movie is garbage. And here's why. If you have never seen The Matrix before and you walked into this movie,
no idea.
You have no
idea.
You have no idea what's happening. And they didn't even try to make a veiled attempt at reaching any new fans.
Yeah.
It was like strictly based on like the idea that who's the director again? I think he directed Gremlins 2. This is like like a remix of Gremlins 2.
It was actually directed by Lana Wachowski, one of the original owners of the IP, but there was a lot of production and development as to how they can make it more applicable to today's audience, because it's been close to a decade since the last movie in the series. We have like Animatrix and stuff coming up in regards to it, and also the video game that came around in that same 5-year period. But there's been some time, and markets and interests have changed with the new.
Sure, like franchise aside,
yeah,
right, the IP aside, this movie as a standalone, I think there are just so many terrible moments. There are some shiny ones, right? I feel like the first act, like for me, I thought, it was really kind of interesting how they tongue-in-cheek the whole production of the meta idea.
Oh yeah, that actually brings up a good point.
Spoiler alerts.
Yeah. If you guys haven't seen The Matrix Resurrections, we're at the point of at the day of this recording. It's been out for a while, but if you haven't seen this movie and you want to see it, stop listening to the podcast. Stop, because we're going to talk about everything. We're going to ruin.
On this one, I don't think it matters. We can just keep on going. I mean, honestly, I love your spoiler alert, but on this one, man.
Not so much.
It's kind of like if you needed a spoiler alert for the piece of produce that is still on the stand and it's already rotten.
I got you.
You're looking at it. I mean, you can tell like you're not gonna like this movie if you're not into the franchise anyway.
Let's jump into that dichotomy then, because Andrus, we've talked a lot about how established IPs can already kill a movie before it starts. And like after seeing the Resurrections and also being a big fan of it yourself, like do you think that might be a situation? Do you think this movie may have been cursed before it was even released? Because the Matrix trilogy is a huge deal.
Yeah, because they did that with part 2 and part 3. The first one was great the way that it was. Then they wanted to finish it and take the story further, which had a lot of really fun elements to it. But I still think that the first one is the best one. They didn't need to go through the second and third to finish the story because the first one was fine the way that it ended.
Do you think that it's like what Anthony's talking about, where it's a fun movie? I'm speaking in regards to the sequel and the third movie in the cinematic series. Do you think like this is
Reloaded and was it Reloaded and what's the third one?
Now I've got to look it up.
Now I got to look it up, right?
Because now I'm thinking is Resurrection.
But while you're looking it up, like Anthony brought up a really a good point. Do you think like both of those movies, because of like momentum that the first one started, it was okay for them to be lower quality. It was okay for them to be bad because people still liked it.
I don't know that they were lower quality. I just think that they ruined the original story. I think that the Matrix, as far as the first movie, told a very, very complete story from beginning to end.
Right.
And then when they saw the success of it, they wanted to expand the universe. Like all of the stuff in Zion, I would much rather have like preferred never seeing.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Like the idea that they have this technology, the idea that they're rebels fighting the machines, Skynet or not.
Mm-hmm.
Skynet and Rebels. That's two other outside references I was going to make.
And literally, that's what it is. It's just mashed up.
It's the character arc of Luke Skywalker in New Hope. But it's like they just went straight to, like, they ended it with Return of the Jedi, like in the last 30 minutes of the movie. Like, it's like, boom, okay, that's done. It's nice. It was like nice, done, story told, complete. And then the Reloaded and whatever, Revolutions, I think is the other one.
Yes, there you go.
Like, I mean, that's just a cash grab. They wanted more action, more bullets.
That's exactly how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like,
you guys are agreeing a lot. I did not see this happening. This is a pleasant surprise. Do you guys?
I really like those movies, though. Right? Like, I'm not gonna knock it. Like, I like those movies. They're fun movies.
Well, we've talked about the hero's journey on more than one occasion, on more than one movie, because obviously, whenever you have a protagonist who happens to be male and they're going to be going through any kind of series of events and like a cinema of some situation, Campbell's writings come up a lot, and this was definitely a good example, I think, of just basic hero's journey stuff, where For you guys that don't know, I mean, we've talked about this before. You have a hero, they learn something new. They're like, they're preordained to be great. Yeah, the everyman. They find a teacher. They go through some terrible, perilous thing where they have to become human again for a brief second. They lose that teacher, and then through that pain, they're able to evolve into the true hero by the third act, and they're able to win the game. This happens a lot. And picking up on that, I think that like when you guys deal with like again the momentum of the first film. The second, third, and unfortunately this one too, is just about stretching that premise. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's definitely a cash grab in a lot of ways. But
I don't think this one was a cash grab. Well, I do think the
third one.
The second and third, like making it a trilogy, I think that was also kind of like studio driven at the time too. Thinking about it, like late 90s, early aughts, like to have a sci-fi trilogy adventure was like, it's ironically was like the new Star Wars for that kind of generation,
right?
When really there was a new Star Wars at the time, which is also kind of funny,
right?
But nobody really paid attention to that.
It's interesting. It's interesting when you say that, because like we're taking a Berlin International Literature Festival article from the wiki page that popped up. Apparently, Warner Brothers constantly approached the Wachowskis every year since Revolutions to make another one. And for like the past decade or so, they were saying, no, I'm not going to do it. It's done. We're fine with going on. But when it came to like this one, there was a lot of special events that I just came to mind, a lot of tragic events that unfortunately the Wachowskis had to deal with, which ended up giving birth to this film, which we'll get into in a minute. But what I wanted to kind of back up on a little bit was, this is definitely like the hero's journey. This is textbook stuff. and it's supposed to be something that works 90% of the time. Like, this is something that has been written into literature, into poetry, into movies. Why did they fail with this movie? What was wrong
because it's a repeat of the same damn characters.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
We already told this story.
Right.
Why are we retelling it?
Right.
Well, and we already knew that he had the power to bend the Matrix at his will.
No,
He
but
could
not
fly.
in this reality. But not in this.
But not in this one. So this time it's
over
different.
here.
It's like they
Which one
should
of
have. And there was no character development really with any of the ancillary characters.
That's true.
There wasn't.
That's
I don't
true.
know. I don't still know the names of them. Like,
wait.
I watched
Are
the
you
movie
referring to?
20 times.
Are you referring to Bugs, Satee, Niobe, Gwendavere,
Bugs.
the Sequoia, Jude, Shepard, Berg, and Lexi?
Who? Nobody knows these people.
Huh? What?
Well, what about Morpheus? That was reclaimed by the brilliant Yahya Abdul-Mateen. He did a good job.
Good actor. I don't give a shit though.
About the character development?
No, it was awful.
Okay.
It was awful.
They didn't make us really care about the characters at all.
So
like, there was almost like the whole cast was expendable except for Neo and Trinity, and it turned into like just a basic plot line of like, oh, he's got to save her. Okay.
Right.
Like
what I would have liked.
Go ahead.
What I would have liked is if they did a new version of all of it. Using like the video game plot line would have been really cool, but tell it from a different story or find a new hero or something. But it was so irritating.
There has been negative press on the movie specifically for that reason, and the phrase "Keanu Reeves is too old" has been thrown around the internet a lot in regards to that situation. I know that's just like reactionary, right? That's just a quick fix to a very complicated problem.
Nobody better mess with Keanu on my watch,
exactly,
because he's awesome.
I don't think the problem is Keanu.
I don't think so either.
Although I will say that there is some very, very terrible acting in the bathroom scene where Morpheus does show up.
Yeah.
And he's doing this weird, like kind of like trying to act surprised or like he's having a freak out or something.
Sure.
That's just not. It's not in his depth. Like, it just isn't.
I think that the reason as to why we can see there was so much push behind this, and also because why that there may have been some holes in the story development and how this may appear to be like a bit of a. I'm picking up what you guys are putting down. You could argue that this is like a mishmash of old ideas with a new coat of paint, and unfortunately the paint hasn't really dried yet. By the time it's out in the theaters, it's not a finished product. It has to go through a couple more edits. But the reason as to why
that's an interesting analogy if it wasn't for the fact that they took this, let's say, the classic car, right? And it has the cherry red, paint job on it. And what they did is they brought it to the shop and they're like, well, should we change this thing? No, let's just put a fresh coat of cherry red paint on it and call it good. They didn't change the story at all. Like,
that's the thing too.
They didn't change the characters at all. It basically just became like an extension of a love story, which the Matrix oddly ends up being at the end of Resurrection or
you're right.
Revolutions,
yeah.
And so at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, we're back to this same plot premise,
right?
And the other thing is too, like, can we talk briefly like about how fucking terrible the fight scenes were?
We'll get into that for sure. But I want to
fight scenes.
How dare you? How dare you?
Sorry.
It was like Fight Scene, the Broadway musical. That's where it was. But the Merovingian, we'll be surprised if Lambert Wilson coming back as the Merovingian was nice. But I wanted to. We'll jump into like some more constructive criticism in regards to it. But I did want to touch what I think may be the reason as to why it does feel a little slapdash. Going back to your analogy, Anthony, it is a car that has a new paint job, but it's absolutely was being marketed as like, the latest model or something like that, when it absolutely isn't. And the trailer that we just watched speaks to that. Like, they're introducing like these new twists on an old story. We don't know if Smith is back or not. Spoilers, he is, and Jonathan Groff I think does a good job. but we'll talk about that at length towards the end of the podcast. But one of the things that really kind of pulled at my heartstrings a little bit was the way in which this whole universe and this movie specifically started that when it came to the real life situation that the Wachowskis were dealing with. We know very specifically that Lana and Lily were going through transition this past decade. They've completed that point of their lives, and when you look at the entire Matrix IP through the eyes of somebody who is going through that stress, I think it kind of adds some extra, at least for me, it added some layers to it. But mostly what happened in regards to the Matrix being made this past year was due to the unfortunate loss of the Wachowskis' parents. Reading from the wiki from the same Berlin International Literature Festival article that I was referencing before, quote, "I couldn't have my mom and dad, yet suddenly I had Neo and Trinity, arguably the two most important characters in my life. It was immediately comforting to have these characters alive again, and it's super simple. You can look at it and say, okay, these two people die, and okay, maybe I could bring these two people back to life, and oh, doesn't that feel good? Yeah, I did that. It's that simple, and this is what art does, this is what stories do. They comfort us, and that's why they're important." And I think that's a really good way to put it about. If I had the power, really, to tell a studio, hey, I want to make a story that's going to make me feel good, I would jump at the chance. And there is a lot of reasons as to why we can offer constructive criticism in regards to the way in which the film came out. I agree with a lot of what you guys are putting down. I agree that it was rushed. I believe that it could have been much better than it was. There wasn't enough story structure. There wasn't a lot of character development. But Anthony said it like right when we started recording. It's a bad movie, but I love it. And I ask you guys, why is that the case? Why?
I am going to say, I did not turn it off.
Okay.
But entertainment value aside, I really wasn't all that jazzed about the whole movie in its entirety.
How dare you?
Nostalgia has a lot to do with it.
I gotcha. No, for sure.
A lot to do with it. But I mean, my biggest problem with this movie is bullet time and all of the groundbreaking stuff that they did with the original movie, Matrix.
Right.
was so special. And like the story that they told was so special. And if the Wachowskis have a sentiment to this movie in that nostalgia or celebrating the loss of their parents and finding a connection to their parents,
I don't know if they were celebrating it, but they were definitely.
Well,
no, I see
in a sense,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's not like party they're gone. It's reliving characters.
You're absolutely right.
But if that's a moment of sentimentality for them, great, power to them. But for me, it was like dragging the characters through the mud, and I didn't particularly enjoy that.
That's interesting.
It was nice that that in the first trilogy we got a sense of martyrdom out of the characters, and
out of both of them, yeah.
And, a chance to survive and as a species and fight and peace and everything. But this just it felt like a smack in the face to what the characters were. And maybe that's why they didn't want to do it for so long, is how do we bring it back?
Yeah, they couldn't. That's actually one of the reasons they brought up. They thought it was done. Both of them thought, you know what, we've done what we can.
It should have been done. And if they wanted to do a reboot, well, great. Give us some different characters in the same world. I'm fine with that.
Okay, so that's where I have to disagree with you, because I feel like the kind of like a lame attempt at trying to restart the franchise. This was not. This was like the antithesis of that. It was like it wasn't like intended to be like that kind of movie. I think it was supposed to be the bow on top, and that's it. And that's what a
happy ending
Atlanta wanted. And that's how she, I think, woke up one morning and thought about it. Like, all right, well, I'll finally do this, but if I do, I'm going to end it.
Yeah.
And not leave any loose ends for it to be.
Do you feel like they accomplished that, or did they leave it open ended to do another like 6-pack?
I think they put it out there with the intention of saying like, hey, it is what it is. I felt like doing this because I'm going through something and this feels good right now.
Yeah.
Sure.
And other than like her parents, you know, like what are the two most important characters in her life? Probably Neo and Trinity.
Yeah, she said that. Yeah, absolutely.
It was more therapeutic, I think, for her to write it this way rather than just do like a shameless cash grab like reboot.
Right.
Which, by the way, they should have just called it Matrix Rebooted. Why the fuck did they not do that?
Why not?
It's a missed opportunity for sure.
I heard somebody call it Matrix regurgitations.
Oh God.
there's a lot of.
Do you think that's the reason as to why you said what you said? Like, it is a bad movie, but you still like it. Do you think it's because you were able to appreciate that sentimentality, that you were able to respect it, or
appreciated moments
okay.
of it? And I think that there was enough of those moments to string together into like a cohesive, like, aw.
Sure.
Like it wasn't like I mean, if you put anything out with this IP, like I'm gonna watch it because I'm a fan, because it came out at a time, you know, that for me, like I said before, it was kind of like a new Star Wars. It was something that made sense. Because if you think about like the way that studios were handling the sea change of technology,
they didn't know what the hell to do.
They didn't know what to do. Right.
There was a lot of exciting, amazing new things, and I had
no idea
how to deal with it. No idea how to implement it.
What did come out? Let's go through like 90s internet-based movies. What was there?
That was it.
Oh, it was
Sandra Bullock, The Net, I think was one.
Yeah.
Ironically, another Keanu, I think, not Lawnmower Man, but what was the Johnny Mnemonic?
Johnny Mnemonic was around that time, the late 90s. Hackers, that was a big thing, but it was.
They had no real clue of like how to grasp this concept
and turn it into a point of narrative.
The internet.
Yeah.
And so when the Wachowskis came along with this idea, it kind of like they were like, we know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
We know exactly how to write this. We know exactly how to portray this. Like we know exactly what these people are about. Because they were kind of, you know, tech dorks, and
more
importantly, like that.
Not more importantly, but I think you're hitting the nail right in the head. And to go back to like my previous point as well, they were people who were questioning their own identity. They didn't know if their life was real, really. I mean, now Lily and Lana are you know, they're women. They weren't biologically born as women, and to go through that with your life, I mean, that has a different interpretation of being in a simulation, you know, living a lie, not understanding what the world is until you've been able to fight it through and find your own truth, much from the way that, you know, Neo and the members of the Matrix crew were able to do. I think that's always been a very interesting point of discussion. And I watch the Matrix movies every year, and since I've been able to kind of grow an empathy for like that community, it has changed those movies for me. I mean, I don't know what it means to be a member of that community, but my God, you know, it must have been life-changing. And when it comes to the way, like to your point, they had no idea what to do with like the possibilities of digital film, editing and everything until The Matrix was able to hit it big. Not specifically like, you know, we're inventing premises, even though they did invent bullet time and different ways in which they could, you know, use photography that changed film, but the way to sell it too. Do you guys think like that is, and Andrus hit a really good point in regards to this, there was nothing special, there was nothing new, technologically speaking, and we have enough experience to like, I think, be impressed by the hard work people put into film. But do you guys think that was something that was against this production from the jump? We don't have a new bullet time. We don't have new cameras that came out. We don't have a new IMAX technology. All things that The Matrix was able to develop when it was being made and put into production. Is that then unfair to call this a bad movie because it has so much to live up to?
Well, I didn't watch this in VR or AR, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
but that's a good point. That would have been the step beyond, like the step into something new. The way that this hit home, I think, for a lot of people when it came out, was even if you weren't into production, you could tell on screen there was something special going on.
Yeah,
there was something new. There was a way that movie came across to people that I think it stunned a lot of people. Like, wow, I didn't know you could do that.
Right.
I didn't know that shot could be made with the camera. I didn't know, how did they do that? I think was the first thing that, after riding home from seeing the original Matrix in the theater, that's the first thing that we said in the car, I think, with my two friends that I saw. We were like, how did they shoot that? How did they do that? There was nothing like that in this. But like, to Andrew's point, like that would have been the step beyond. Like, how do you make the IP just as effectual as it was back then with the technologies of today, without making it something that it's not, right? Because it can't just be a movie at that point.
Right.
And just plot points pissed me off in this too. Like the
there was a plot.
Wow.
No, like just or not.
This is interesting.
I don't even want to say that.
I can count on one hand. Right. I can count on one hand how many titles we've gone through. You've actually been mildly perturbed about the title that we're talking about. You're usually such a good sport and give such a long olive branch to like production and actors alike with the stuff, but you're throwing some heat right now, Andrus. I'm enjoying it. Lean into it.
Feeling some heat. Because I mean this franchise does mean a lot to me, and because it means a lot to me, I'm going to be more passionate about it.
I love it. Yeah.
And I feel like it with the trilogy ending the way that it did, and then adding this, like the idea of the Animatrix, I enjoyed discovering more about that world.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed the animation series.
Yeah.
But this did nothing for me but piss me off. Because they didn't do anything bigger and better. They brought back some characters, but not all of them. They introduced new ones, didn't do anything with them other than have them be soldiers in the fight.
Yeah. It's a tired premise that we've seen before, unfortunately, even though it's a premise that does work when it comes to making movies, when it comes to being profitable at making movies. It's definitely something that we've seen before. And when you deal with like an established IP, where you have one of the creators who's the director, it kind of begs the question, why not push the envelope a little bit more instead of going cookie cutter? And the reason as to why is because that wasn't what Lana Wachowski wanted to do. She wanted to make a movie that made her feel good, and sometimes you just regurgitate things, rinse and repeat, and go with things that are steady and that they can affirm some sort of positive emotion, which is why the ending, we have the power transferred over to Trinity. She's the one who's able to go through and actually become the new one, for lack of a better term. And they have...
in this new Matrix.
Yeah.
That's, I think, yeah. I mean, the dichotomy is not a subtle nod anymore.
That's true.
About the male-female role. It's like very in your face in this.
Yeah, and I don't mind that too much. I can understand. I thought it was fun that that Trinity's character wasn't used as just a love interest, and she wasn't throughout the original movies either.
Just a damsel in distress.
Exactly. But I mean, like, she wasn't just that in the other movies as well. I think they trained the line a lot, but it definitely was.
She was a badass.
She was a badass, but like she wasn't Jesus. She wasn't Jesus. That's the thing. Why can't a woman be the hero in the hero's journey? And the reason to why is just
she can if she's the hero.
Yeah, and they proved that with this one. I mean, even though the ending where we have like Neil Patrick Harris as the analyst, he's getting killed over and over again. And Neil Patrick Harris, like, he's one of these actors that I know he tries so hard to play serious characters, scary characters, but I can't help but just laugh at the maniacal kind of Dr. Horrible kind of characterization that he has. He does a good job of being...
It's hard to rinse the stain of Barney from
How I Met Your Mother. Yeah.
Or what? Yeah, How I Met Your Mother. Wasn't his name?
It was Barney. Yeah, I think so. Barney? But like that's the
sorry,
thing.
I'm still stuck on Doogie. So.
But like that's what I mean. But I can still take it seriously when he does what he's so good at. In the scene where like they're all meeting up and Trinity finally realizes who she is, and his character starts to get scared and he's telling people like go over there, hit them or whatever. And also when he's in the last scene where Neo and Trinity have gotten up to full power and they're talking about like we're gonna kick your ass, we're gonna change your world and everything. And he's playing like the scammy kind of scared villain or whatever, and coming up with these really funny like one-liners at the time, and the delivery is good. It's when in the first scene when we're trying to develop this serious, sad, PTSD depressed Neo, and we have the lovely Neil Patrick Harris who is trying to convince him that his wife is a lie. That's not working for me.
Speak to this, I'm sure, but that's bad casting. I think, in my opinion, like there's no reason for an audience to fear any of the villains.
That's a great point.
I don't feel afraid of, like, not even one of them looks scary to me.
So,
or like Javier Bardem, like, you know, No Country for Old Men.
No,
right? That's like a guy that you
cuddly. He's just adorable. That's
a guy that, like, in that movie, you're like, wow, this guy might actually fucking kill people.
Well, that's
like, why did they go out of their way to find that guy?
Yeah.
Find the next Javier, like, and put him in that role.
Why not just go with the original and let Hugo Weaving be the analyst, which I thought would have been amazing, but no, they didn't do that.
I don't understand why they kind of. I don't know. I think it's really because Lana just wanted to feel good, and Neil Patrick Harris makes you feel good. He really does. He doesn't threaten you.
He does in other movies,
right? And also that isn't throwing shade at NPH, dude. I mean, like, I appreciate him as an actor. He's really good at what he does. I think both of you are really. Anthony said it brilliantly. It's like you're not scared of the villains in this movie. You're not scared of the agents. You're not scared of the bugs. You're not scared of the machines. The machines are cute in this movie. There's a dolphin.
Do you know why that is, by the way?
No, why is that?
Because they've already ran the course. This should not have happened. Sorry.
Yeah. It shouldn't have been made, to be completely honest. Like, I'm happy that it was.
Right.
I don't let me ask you this, Mike.
Yeah.
You watch, as someone who watches the Matrix trilogy annually, will this be added to your watch list for the
Absolutely
Matrix?
Not. Absolutely
not.
I'll tell you what I will do, though. I will, you know, I'll buy it on Amazon or something or whatever, and I will fast forward to the scenes that I liked. I will fast forward to the scenes in the coffee shop where Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss have good chemistry. I will fast forward.
That brings up a good point. Maybe we should pivot into what did we like about the movie?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and tell me?
Well, I think that the Act 1 meta stuff was actually pretty well done.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't expect that. That was the one surprise walking into the movie that I kind of felt like, oh, ooh, that's a little uncomfortable. They're, like, literally looking at the camera and winking. Like, you know, and it kind of, like, it made more sense to me.
They were just pushing up against the fourth wall a little bit, for sure.
They were kicking the fucking wall down. I guarantee you, like, that was it was probably remnants of some of the meetings that they had about developing.
Oh yeah, the scenes we were talking about. Yeah.
A big Hollywood, you know, production roundtable, like,
right.
tends to go that way. Like, and then you've got these douchebag millennial guys that are like, no, man, you got to get up in their gray matter, and like, those lines were funny, and like, to me that was entertaining. It's like when it got into the actual, I struggle even using the word action scenes,
sure,
because it was more like a choreographed dance. Which, ironically, did you know they used the production team used the exact same stunt coordinators as they did in the original trilogy?
I didn't know that,
and yet we still ended up with this steaming pile of garbage as far as fight scenes go.
I didn't realize that at all. Oh my gosh, that's interesting.
So it's bizarre to me that, like, you know, I'm not going to get back into things that I don't like. Right. It's bizarre that, like, it ended up that way.
Sure.
The things that I did like, yeah, I think, you know, there hasn't been a movie in a like a very well-known IP come out to test the boundary of, you know, and to kind of try to be something different, try to be something unique like that in the first act.
Yeah.
Like, that's where you lost a lot of people that had no idea or hadn't seen The Matrix before, like, hadn't seen any of the movies. They don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, no idea at all.
But for a fan, I felt that was cool. And I liked that. I really liked it all the way up until, like, Act 2. I was entertained. I was like, oh, what's going to happen?
The hardest
because
thing,
now they've gotten all this stuff out of the way,
yeah,
that we were wondering what they were going to do.
Like, how are they going to tell the story of the resurrection? What the hell is going on?
Yeah, like, I didn't know what was going to happen. So that part, to me, I think was fun. I liked that part of the movie. Mm-hmm. And I think that, like, yeah, it was a little more baked than it was more well done than I liked it to be, you know?
Yeah.
But I did like it, and it also kind of like set apart like this movie from other franchises that I've gone into, thinking like, okay, hopefully they do something bigger and better and different, and then you end up with like Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Well, the hardest thing to do, the most challenging thing to do, the hardest thing to do in any kind of media, especially when it comes to cinema, and like we're talking about, you know, a force of industry that has a capability of turning aircraft carriers around on a whim. You know, if the Top Gun story is
only
true.
Bruckheimer can do that.
But the hardest thing is breaking the mold twice. That's the hardest thing, and it goes back to that situation where where's the new technology, where's the new story, where's all this other stuff. But at the very least, we can, you know, rest on the fact that there's some things about this movie that actually make us feel good. This osmosis that we have with Lana Wachowski being able to actually provide some positive endings for her characters that we love too, I think shouldn't be diminished a bit in regards to, you know, these things that happen. You see Neo and Trinity reconnecting. You see Neil Patrick Harris having some fun here and there. You see Jonathan Groff, who's one of my favorite actors, lean hard into the melodrama of Smith. And, you know, sometimes I know the fight scenes, not good, but the scenes in the office where you can see Smith under Groff's eyes, and you know that I think that Smith is having fun with the entire situation, that tickled me a little bit. I kind of enjoyed that.
Oh, that brought up a good point that I just forgot to mention too. I did like some of the subtleties of like in the reflections. Like, the way that stuff was laced into that first act, you know, where you were kind of seeing something for a half a second, you know, that, or like 3 or 4 frames of a reflection.
You get to see Carrie.
I thought that was cool too. Yeah. I actually, that got me more excited for the movie.
Right. Like, what are they doing? What's going on?
Yeah. I walked in thinking like, okay, this is going to be a reboot and hopefully they don't fuck it up.
Right.
But once you got into the meta stuff, you know, I was like, oh, wait a minute. They're not going to just do a reboot.
Right.
This is going to be something different. And they had those kind of interesting effects that were happening through that, you know, section of the movie. That was enjoyable to me.
A special thing
they
that
lost me after that.
Yeah, for sure.
They lost me after that.
The first act, we have like that introduction. We have that bit of mystery that's going in. We have like this hope that like, oh wait, maybe the entire world's different and everything. Then we have the second act where Keanu is coming back to what he was. We have the fight out in the office, and then at the third act where he's already been rescued and taken out of his pod, and then the main mission of the movie. The third act starts with Jada Pinkett Smith's character Niobe.
I'm sorry. Which movie were you talking about? The original or this?
How dare you?
I just got lost.
How dare you?
No, I'm sorry. I did know.
But the third
totally got lost.
But the third act starts when we have Niobe, you know, putting her foot down. But then the real mission comes out, and then it comes to like the culmination where we see that the hero is rejoined with his power. In this case, it's with Neo and Trinity becoming, you know, being able to fix the code and embracing their you know.
And look what we're doing. We're critiquing the Act 2, Act 3 of this movie, really, because they did make Act 1 almost critic proof. Because they're like, oh, we know everybody that it's in the fandom is going to talk this shit about this sequel.
Absolutely.
So let's just get it all out of the way and go and do it ourselves, tongue in cheek. And I thought that was creative.
That was creative.
Most reboots of trilogies, IPs that have huge fandoms, they struggle to kind of to sidestep that.
Yes.
And it becomes like, it becomes what everybody thinks it's going to become, which is just a cash grab, a reboot, the same character arc, different stuff going on. This movie managed to sidestep that for one act.
Right.
That's why it kept me interested.
That's cool. Andrus, do you feel the same way in regards to this? Like, you know, nice try, guys, way to go. Maybe the nostalgia was able to carry you along, but also like end up being like a double-edged sword. Were there some things that you could take away from this movie that you would, you know, maybe even from like a technical standpoint, you'd be able to say, hey, kudos?
I don't know, because like I just feel like I'm being such a negative, like, poison spewing asshole.
No, not at all.
Okay, so I do agree with Mr. Anthony as far as the first act. That was fun. That was refreshing. I love seeing depressed Neo. That was really good.
Depressed Neo is not bad. Yeah.
In the first Matrix, you know, it was like this whole discovery of opening up the universe for him, because his life isn't all that great in this world anyway. But the fact that he's really struggling with depression, like I understood
Relatable.
all of it's so relatable,
Yeah.
especially, you know, the isolation, the COVID, the pandemic side of that isolation. I think everybody's gonna identify with that in that light. But yeah, honestly, this movie, I wasn't super excited to go see it, even though I love the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I buckled and I saw it, and I did not turn it off, which is a true indication of my entertainment value.
Really
so
is.
I will say I was entertained, but I was never sucked in to this movie the way that I was with the first one.
Yeah.
Even
that's
I'll
the
even
biggest
give
problem,
this-
isn't it? That's the biggest problem.
Yeah, and I'll give 2 and 3 some credit too, because they did a really nice extension of the original story with 2 and 3, even though I wasn't a big fan of that. This one just had a little notes of nostalgia, and honestly, I would have preferred just to see the Neo Trinity scenes.
Yeah.
Without all of the extra garbage, and I would have loved to see like a before sunrise, after sunset, like Trinity and Neo movie, as opposed to the action movie that it ended up being.
There is something to be said about like the quality. I mean, this movie made the careers for Reeves and Moss, and I think that they did a really good job of doing the best they could to provide us a picture of where these characters are at, as a reflection of, you know, some warriors that are in really weird circumstances, that are older, that are, you know, in relation to
a lot older. Isn't Keanu almost 60?
He is,
like,
but
how old are they?
But that's the thing too. Like the reason as to why we see all the Hadokens and stuff is because unfortunately, even if it's fake martial arts, a 60-year-old man can't be doing like crane kicks as well as he was able to 20 some odd years ago.
I'm gonna throw that one out a little bit too, because I mean, we've seen all of our 80s action stars go well into this decade.
That's true.
Or, you know, still doing other stuff. Now, are they in the peak shape that they were back then?
Right.
But JCVD
is not doing the splits like he used to.
That's true. That's John Connor, another good movie. But like that's what I want to give.
There's that.
I want to give credit though to both of them, because they are the, you know, the main. They are the lead in this movie, and I think that despite the fact that it has been years since they played these characters, I think they handle it very elegantly. I think they both are able to bring the chemistry when it's needed. They're able to bring the scene in the motorcycle shop where you see Carrie-Anne Moss and she's like, Neo, or something like that. I think that's really just because they didn't give the actors a lot to work with. But when they come together,
not a lot to work with these characters. They're already done. Andrus is right. Like, it's been done. Like, you're not going to intrigue an audience by revamping, you know, the same dialogue.
I get that, but like
they're meeting again.
I know.
No.
No.
You're absolutely right. I just liked it how like the craft that they were doing in those scenes. It was great. I really do like it when Reeves and Moss get together and they're able to act things out, because you can see that there's a connection there.
Sidebar or side note on that, did you know that she is married to the character Chad, I think, in this one?
Really?
That is actually Keanu Reeves' stunt double.
Get out of here. Really?
Yeah, in the original trilogy.
I wonder if they met him.
I can't remember his name, but they cast him in this as her husband.
That's super cool.
Dad, which is kind of funny in itself. So that's interesting. But in relation to your previous point, yes, these two, you know, people, actors or not, 20 years later, are not going to be doing the same kung fu and fight scenes. That's just not going to happen. But the fact that they neglected to pay any attention or any mind to that fandom, and a big part of the fandom is based on these being action movies.
Yeah, you brought up
action scenes,
when we were talking about this.
Bugs in.
Exactly, that's why I put bugs in there for sure, and more CGI. But we talked about this.
There was another character in this movie.
It was Bugs, played by the lovely and capable Jessica Henwick, who has.
Well, she's great.
She has great work when it comes to action films in general. As does a lot of the characters that were popping up. We have Priyanka Chopra Jonas, who had been doing FBI when she first came out, an action series based off of the FBI. We have a lot of really tenured actors here with Christina Ricci, Max Riemelt, Brian J. Smith, and Arendira Ibarra. They were both from the Sense8 series that the Wachowskis did, and they were great, and there was really good choreography and action and that kind of stuff.
So minimal characters in this that I was so irritated.
That bothered me a little bit too.
Again, pass the torch. If this is going to be one of those movies, please pass the torch.
Yeah.
Which I think they tried to do with Bugs, but
we'll see. But when it comes to like the situation, swing and a miss. One of the last things I want to bring up though, and it kind of goes back to Amp's point a bit, because we had a great conversation prior to recording today, and you made a really good point where it made, what'd you say? It made frat boys who are going to see a kung fu movie start getting excited about Nietzsche or something about that.
Nietzsche, and about like all of the subtleties. That what's crazy is that like the original is great in many aspects. Like it is a perfect character arc, a perfect hero's journey. It kind of turns into kind of a love story, which is also great, screenwriting. The way that it came together and it ended. I mean, it's almost too similar to A New Hope. I think. Yeah. When I saw it, that's what I was thinking. Like, oh, there's a ticking time, clock, and he's got to get out of the Matrix before yada yada happens, and maybe think of like the trench run. And trust your feelings. Always beginning to believe. Like that. Those lines like that were reminiscent of my childhood favorite movie. Right?
For sure.
And favorite IP. So naturally, I fell in love with it. But what was crazy to me was that like jocks and frat boys were like geeking out over the Matrix when it came out, and like getting into like the philosophy behind it, and some of like and they're like, it's kind of like they're like tropes now, but like it was like, I mean, he lives in apartment 101, which is like the angel number, and like all these like subtleties, and like the Deus Ex Machina book that he keeps his hacks in and shit. Like all of these like philosophical things, like you were debating that with people that I was like, what?
Dude, the best thing about you is that you can bench press your body weight. And I'm talking to you about like Descartes. What the hell is going on?
The football team? Why are you wearing a trench coat and sunglasses indoors? But that's what it did. It catalyzed a lot of that, and I think that was also a reason to, like Andrus mentioned, to extend the story arc into a larger, franchise. It was a perfect movie in and of itself. It should have just ended right there. It would have been great. To speak on that, the ending of this one too should have ended like it could have ended perfectly. Like just they look over, they're sitting in the chairs. You know the scene I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
And they touch each other's hands. Boom.
Fade out. Good to go.
Fade out. Credits. Actually, just go straight to, and for fuck's sake, don't get me started on the Rage Against the Machine cover band. Please. I swear to God, I almost like threw. We were at.
You're a big Rage fan for sure.
We were at a theater that like they had like food and beer and stuff.
Yeah.
I almost threw my tray in there and like stormed out of there.
So that would have been a good choice.
I mean, so just that alone, like I don't want to talk about it too much, but like that was like the cherry on top of like the shitty sundae.
For all of you who may not know, there was one of the most popular tracks in the Matrix movies, and also I think one of the very first deals that Zach from Rage Against the Machine agreed to putting into like popular like capitalist
to
kind of
allow their music to be used
for the band Rage Against
Rage
Against the Machine was the first Matrix movie. It's the ending song that pops up on the credits of the first movie, and this one
Reloaded
and
Revolutions
and
check it out.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, part of me thinks that maybe Lana Wachowski is trying to fuck with us. Like in the same way, like, bear with me.
Okay.
But in the same way that Act 1 fucks with us in a meta kind of sense.
Yeah.
She went to the same song, but by a different band.
It was a cover.
Band
it was a
with
cover.
Female lead singer as kind of like a weird way of saying,
Maybe.
like, hey, this movie is not real. This isn't like a real franchise. Like,
that'd be great.
Like, don't include it in your annual Matrix watch, Michael.
Yeah. They're speaking to me. I get it. Well, I can respect completely where you guys are coming from. I do know I am in mostly agreement with what you guys are saying. I think we're all saying, like, the biggest problem this movie has is that it had so much to live up to and it was at a disadvantage from the jump. But I do like how, the coffee scene. I do like Neil Patrick Harris's character being pretty much an arms dealer who was able to stitch the two main leads back together. And I think that there's some lights in the tunnel, but unfortunately overall it's just not a good addition to the IP, but it could still be fun. And yeah, exactly. If you guys do want to make the commitment to becoming more well-rounded in the Matrix IP, we can only show you the door. It's up to you to take the step.
And Anthony, you just said that, and I'm just like, that asshole just messed with every single fan.
Yeah.
Of the Matrix franchise with this movie.
Absolutely. So let's jump in then, and seeing as we're getting close to the end of our episode, we're going to jump into specialities, and I really want you guys to lean in and tell me what you think. Let's start off with you, Anth, because you've had some history when it comes to independent production. You've been behind a camera before. You've been a photographer on a lot of decent projects back in the day. I think it's safe to say that you know the kind of pressures that come when it comes to being, something relative like an assistant AD or something along those lines when it comes to things that are on the wire that has to be taken care of. They probably didn't worry about that too much on a multi-million-dollar production like this. I mean, as of IMDb counters today, The Matrix has made a gross box office of $35,816,000. But regardless, there's pressure when you're in the trenches in that regard. What do you think are some of the maybe some of the unseen challenges that people who are on the crew had to deal with when this thing was in production, in regards to like even COVID and that kind of stuff as well?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm so glad you asked, because I think 35 million is such a drop in the bucket compared to what they spent on this. I think I think this movie cost more to make than the previous three.
I think so. They have a gross of over 140 million, so maybe they're able worldwide. I mean, so maybe they were able to get back up on it. But
it's just so hard to judge it, like in the COVID era, like how much you can expect a quote unquote blockbuster movie to rake in. Like it's difficult to, because you're going to get streams and stuff, but like, will they be selling any of the cute little robot toys off of this movie? Fuck no. Like they're not going to be making like merchandise money. So I think as far as struggles in production, it seems to me that the emphasis of the movie was placed on this story between Neo and Trinity.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of like production woes, because they probably there was a struggle, I think, to capture any of the real essence of the first three movies.
I agree with you.
And the film itself looks cheap.
Go into that. Like what were some of the things that kind of like bothered you the wrong way, where it's like, this may have been that's just still
cut. It's just so chopped up. Every fight scene, there's like 6 camera angles, and it's chop. You never really get the sense that they're like the choreography was put in ahead of anything.
Right.
Like it looks like they knew that this was going to be okay. We've got a scene here that is like a dance, and they wanted it to look like a fight.
Yeah.
Whereas before, when they shot the first movie, there was a lot
long shots, choreography from like start to end.
There was a lot of pressure to make the fights look real.
So maybe it isn't the stunt coordination. Maybe it's the editing that's at fault in regards to that.
Well, here's what happens. I compare it to the development of like music, right? Over the past 2 decades, think about it. In 99, music was mostly CDs.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And the sound quality in CDs is fabulous. It's fucking precise, right?
Yeah.
And then this thing comes out, the iPod or the Zune, if you're really out there. And it just mashes everything, compresses it down to this fucking single brick form wave file.
Right.
That
it's a buzz
when
cut.
you first heard it, it hurt my ears.
Right.
As an audiophile, I was like, this is garbage. This is terrible sound.
Right.
But over time, it started to get a little bit better and a little bit better. And honestly, our ears got trained to hearing that.
No doubt.
Get trained to hearing MP3s. Same thing with production.
Oh.
Like people's eyes got trained to seeing fight scenes broken up, chop, chop, chop. Jerry Bruckheimer, Transformers is like a fucking puke show.
For sure.
It literally looks like 7 computers just in an orgy puking on each other. You cannot tell anything that's going on.
Andrus is shaking his head. He's absolutely agreeing with you.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But people ate that up.
Yeah.
And they loved it.
Yeah.
Not this guy.
Right.
So anybody with any kind of like actual film background where you're looking at in a comparison production A versus production B, they're 20 years apart.
Right.
Right. So an audience that was once stringently like looking at like, hey, we know that there's a lot of computer stuff going on right now in 99. You guys better make this look real.
Right.
They did.
Yeah.
They did their best they could.
Yeah.
And when you look back at it, you're like, wow, like even that fucking scene with the 10,000 Agent Smiths fighting
that was
Neo,
cutting edge back in the day.
It looked great back then.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we're like, well, you know, it's gotten better. It doesn't look that great anymore. But back then they were pushing the boundary to try and make it look real.
Yeah.
Now they're like, fuck it. They're like, people don't care.
Yeah.
People don't care. Transformers trilogy made $40 million. Fuck it.
It's a shame. It's a shame, especially when it's in with an IP that got a lot of people into film that people care about so much. It's interesting though how the conversation I've had when it comes to like the production and talking with other people in regards to that kind of echoes what you're saying. It's one of these situations where it's like it's lost its soul because we know now what is profitable and we don't really have to prove anything anymore. And maybe it would have been a better movie if they, to both your guys' points, they took a minute to say, well, you know what? Let's try and prove something.
There's no accountability.
Accountability. I understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
It's the accountability. It's just like the way that I think it's become so capitalized. Like we're literally just like, what makes money? That wins. I mean, it goes throughout the entertainment industry. I won't go into a diatribe about this, but like music to me has gotten so fucking shitty.
Yeah. Okay.
And film, I think, and production has kind of it's shadowed that.
Well, they go hand in hand.
It's taken longer,
but
it's gotten shittier, and people don't care. People do not care. People will listen to mumble rap right now.
Do you think that? Do you think that?
And love it, and they love it.
Right. So let them love it. Let them love it. Right. Like that's the situation too. Like, are you saying then that like from a production standpoint that Resurrections is proof of that being the case now that
I'm saying that Matrix Resurrections is mumble rap. In terms of production value, it's mumble rap.
That's awesome. Andrus, let's jump into casting a little bit because that's really what I want to pick your head apart in regards to this. We've had interesting conversations about well, not conversations, but we were talking about it briefly before we started recording about some of the picks. Anth has gone to a lot of good points in regards to maybe NPH was just a miscasting situation. Who knows? You talked briefly about Jonathan Groff.
I know.
But let's get into casting. Let's get into what it's like to be an actor looking at things here. And also we have to ask that golden question. Would we be able to replace any of these actors with anybody else? And would that change the story?
Absolutely.
Please lean into this from like, if you wouldn't mind, like a casting director's perspective, knowing the limitations that people have, knowing the responsibility they have with this IP, knowing the disappointments that maybe more tenured CAs would have when they give them this project. What are your opinions about how that worked with this movie?
Well, I would definitely say that Jonathan and Neil Patrick Harris, that they're both relevant. They both are big names right now in the industry, and
which is necessary in your profession.
That's a really big reason that they brought them on. They probably also have relationships with the Wachowskis or with Warner Brothers, or in some respect, there's going to be a connection there. They're not like villains, really. Like, no, is the thing. Like I think we already
Right.
talked about Neil Patrick Harris. Dr. Horrible, great. That's wonderful. He's a ridiculous villain.
Yeah.
Which is why that's great. To put him in that kind of a role,
to be the actual villain, not like the
it didn't make any sense. You know, like if you throw in somebody like John Hamm.
Great choice. I think that's a great choice.
That's just throwing a dart at the wall. Like, I don't even know why he came to mind. But
you were getting emotional about this. I love it when you get serious about this stuff. I love it.
Hugo Weaving would have been my choice. Yeah. I don't know why they didn't go that route with it. Maybe because it was too on the nose. Maybe not. Jonathan Groff. I'm a fan of his work. He does great.
Oh, Mindhunter, get out of here.
Yeah,
great job.
No, I mean we reviewed it, right? Yeah. So he's terrific in everything that I've seen him, even in Hamilton, right?
Yeah, the original King.
Talk about a villain. Yeah. That's a villain he can play really, really well.
Yeah.
That does not translate to Hugo Weaving's Agent Smith.
Exactly.
He's got big shoes to fill for the franchise, period. He was such a great antagonist for the franchise.
Yeah.
It didn't work. So
you touched a little bit about another pain point where we are talking about like Brian Smith and Ibarra and some of the even like Lambert Wilson. I mean, he did the Merovingian very well in the first trilogy.
Love that they brought him back because he was a relevant part of the story. I think that's great.
Right, but it's a pain point for you because you know how talented these people are. We've seen them in other work, and they just don't have enough spotlight here, and they would be able to handle it if it was given to them. Isn't that right? Or do you think
because they needed the new and shiny, just like every movie does now?
Gotcha.
That's why we got Bugs in a new Morpheus.
Gotcha. Yeah, I understand.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So, and nothing against those actors, because I think that they did a very, very respectable job with what they needed to do in this movie. But honestly, fill in the blank with anybody. Like
okay.
And I really do feel that way. You cannot replace Neo. You cannot replace Trinity. You cannot replace Cypher. You cannot replace.
But you can replace
anybody from the original.
You can replace Morpheus, apparently, which was
you can't, and that's the problem. You can't.
I gotcha. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
You can't.
So what do they get right?
I think they got Trinity and Neo. Honestly, I just don't know.
Oh my God!
This movie just should not have been made. This should have been a reunion show. They should have just done
the Friends thing with it in HBO.
Yeah. Like do a reunion show about it. Don't reboot it unless you're going to reboot it all the way.
Talking once more about having our adolescence smashed to the ground by the fourth.
I'm having heart palpitations.
I know. I feel you.
This is a thing for me.
I understand, and rightfully so. It's a thing for anybody who really enjoys film because of the impact it had.
Honestly, no disrespect to anybody that was part of this project, but somebody that maybe has a little bit more of a villainish edge.
Yeah.
Would have been nice.
I feel you. Well, I appreciate
villainy,
I appreciate your feelings about it.
Evil, corrupt, arrogant. I could keep going. I'm sorry.
You're okay. I really appreciate it. I love it when we find one that you're passionate about. I really do. I think from an audio perspective.
Right, or swarmy, is that the
yeah, there's so many adjectives that we just keep them going.
It's perfect.
Douchey.
I feel like we totally agree on that.
Yeah,
but I also think that I kind of want to give them a little bit of kudos on the positive side for trying, some new faces in there.
Well, Andrus said it. They're up against so much.
Many of the characters, so we didn't know any of those actors. Like you said, it's kind of like like, I don't think there was a stellar performance among the bunch of them. Like, it was just kind of, I mean, I would have been so stoked to see a character with like some kind of like new skills, or like maybe they're like, you know, like something.
Yeah,
that was,
and then they become the freak or something, and it's like, and then they can have like their little chunk of the story. How do they find their resolution of the Matrix? How do they remain human? Something along those lines.
Well, I'm gonna go off on another
Get
thing.
Get it.
If you're gonna bring in Christina Ricci and use her for like 2 seconds, then I'm gonna punch you in the face. Like, if you're going to bring in talented actors for 2 stinking lines,
right.
What is the point of that cameo?
What is the point of bringing them in?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. So yeah, no, honestly, the things, stuff, all of it. Go ahead.
So
from
an audio perspective, I am very happy to admit that The Matrix and what they were able to do after I saw that movie was definitely a contributing factor to me. It wasn't the reason. I was going through a lot in 1999, going into 2000, and it wasn't the reason as to why I dropped out of college and moved to New York. But
it was the reason.
It was the reason.
Okay, you can just share.
You were going through a gender reversal.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's the thing too. Like, this movie, I don't want to equate it to the same thing as, like, you know, what the Wachowskis go through. And that's not what you're doing, Ep. I get that, but like, you cannot.
I am doing that. Part of it, I think, is that you can't watch these movies knowing who they are, right? And not see a little.
And not letting that affect you. It changes you.
Right,
it changes you as a fan for cinema. Yeah,
it does. It changes your perspective on the screenplay itself, on the idea of. I can't imagine what that feels like, you know, to be living in a body that doesn't feel like yours, you know, and to feel like you're in a system that's stopping you from being who you want to be, you know, and who you know you are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is some of that in there. It's baked into the plot. I didn't know that seeing the movie, you know, but now in hindsight, of course, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think that too, like to build off of what you're saying, the implementation of the technology and the mixing and the brand new sound effects that I hear copied in other sci-fi movies from The Matrix all the time changed my opinion when it came to what I wanted to do professionally. I moved to New York, spent time there. I've spent, like, we talked about it before, Andrus and I, about like our history in regards to like Los Angeles, New York, living in different cities across the country and everything. That was a very big part of my life, and it ended up giving me a really beautiful career when it came to towards the end of it, towards like, you know, independent film, audio production, and that kind of stuff. And I have the same situation where you guys have, where I do understand the weight and the responsibility that any Matrix production is going to have against the IP that everybody takes very seriously. And unfortunately, regardless of the amount of empathy that I feel for how hard it is, and doing this movie was a challenge. It must have been for everybody on the crew at the very least. It doesn't take away the fact that I can't separate how meaningful the development of this IP was when I was younger, and how now the same way that in which the story is recycled, the exact same way I hear the soundscapes being recycled. And it goes to a point where you have to respect it, because there's some themes that have to be carried over. You have to hear the trumpets wah, 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 with the Matrix theme coming up. You have to hear when, like, you know, the technical sound when they're going into the code. You have to hold that stuff up. And this is going to be really persnickety. And again, I don't know what it means to be on a $100 million movie or whatever it is. I don't want every gun to sound the same. I don't want every footstep to sound the same. I don't want every impact in these fight scenes to sound the same. I want to have, and that's where we've touched on this before, and it sounds so nerdy and it sounds so stupid. It wasn't like there wasn't any originality in this. There were soundscapes and there were sound effects that I hadn't heard before, and I loved it. But it didn't happen the majority of the film. And when we're dealing with the youngest child of the Matrix IP, it's the whole problem across the board. We're expecting something new. We're expecting them to break the mold the fourth time over. And unfortunately, maybe at no fault to everybody who is part of this production, that apparently is not something that can be done. But the things that I did like, I liked a lot, and I still liked the movie, even though it was not
mold. Even though it is the mold.
It's definitely the
much intact.
Yeah, I mean, it's the happy ending that they put at the end. Fine, it's cool. I'm not gonna, sing its praises or try and criticize it too much. It's just that it just could have been more, and unfortunately, that's probably the biggest point of disappointment anyway. So, but still,
maybe just like everything else in the project, they thought that through, and they're in the Matrix, so all of them do sound the same. It's something for us to explore. As far as this doesn't sound right, this doesn't seem right.
Maybe.
Are we in?
Interesting point. I think my biggest disappointment was the shitty Rage cover band at the end. That was it would have been nice if
that's your biggest disappointment, then the Wachowskis did their job.
They absolutely did. Absolutely did.
Mean, and I think at the end of the day, like, I feel like it should have just been like, why not go completely the other way and like have them like touch hands in the chairs and then black out, fly me to the moon.
No, just like an acoustic, just an acoustic guitar version.
Yeah, for sure.
Something completely different than the first three endings.
Well, unfortunately, that was the biggest challenge, and somewhere where it was lacking, there wasn't really that much different about it. Still, a pretty movie, technically very competent, but ultimately, if you're going to be doing the same tradition that I have when it comes to, taking some time to watch the trilogy again, maybe skip this one. But with that, we're going to call it a day, everybody. Really do want to give a huge shout out to my brother Anthony. Thanks so very much. Antanasio, you are a man amongst men. A man amongst men. No, I'm kidding. You're dealing with a young son. You got the family's growing. You're dealing with all the stress, and you take time out of your day to talk to us about a really great subject. I love you, and I really do appreciate you.
Important stuff.
Hey, I think it is. It's an important movie. But I really do appreciate taking time out of your schedule to come and talk with us, bro. Thank you very, very much.
No worries. I would do it again if they ever choose to make another.
Just you wait. Just you wait. The fifth movie is right around the corner. Andrus, thank you so very much, as always, for giving me your time, man. With the new year and with February coming in less than 2 weeks, we know what that means, and we're going to be talking about it. It's going to be Sundance season in Salt Lake, and it's going to be huge. I thought you were going to say
Valentine's Day.
Right.
Or Groundhog Day.
Nice. But as always, I really do appreciate your time. I know things are only getting more busy, even especially in this part of the year. So thank you very much for coming by and giving me your opinion, Drew. I really do appreciate it, Andrus. Thank you.
Fun stuff.
Absolutely. And everybody out there, take some time. If you, saw the movie and disagree with us, let us know. If you absolutely 100% are, correct and agreeing with us, then let us know. Give us an email, pullfocuspod@gmail.com. Like and subscribe on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud. And regardless of what the situation is, or regardless of what you thought of the conversation, remember, we may be wrong, but it's your job to tell us. Thank you very much, everybody. We hope to hear from you again, see you again, listen to each other again, and, by all means, it's still a time of COVID. You know what I usually say. If you're up there helping people out, thank you very much. We stand with you. Hope things will get better. They will get better. But in the meantime, stay good, be good to one another, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Red pill.
Oh, yeah, you forgot to mention the pills.
So many pills on this one.